G'day and welcome to the first episode of Ian Smissen's Photography. Hi, I'm down at San Remo near Phillip Island tonight, and the idea is to go and photograph the rocks at Griffith Point at sunset. But as you can see behind me, the clouds are starting to come in, so I'm not too confident that we're going to get a sunset, but there's still a couple of hours to go, so we'll see what we can do. Hi, I'm walking along the beach. It's about a 20-minute walk from the car park, which is up behind me, along a sandy beach and then a rock platform, and then finally scrambling over some rock rubble to get to Griffith Point. We'll see what it's like when we're out there, but the sun is out, so we might be in luck. So I'm here with the flies, and you can see behind me the rocks of Griffith Point. And as I pan around slowly, you can see the sea out to the south, and then further around over towards Cape Woolamai behind, and a little bit further around the sun setting. So I'm going to set up and hope that the clouds stay away long enough for the sun to peek through that little bit of blue sky that's there at the moment. Using a Pentax K1 with the Pentax 24-70 f2.8 lens, currently on 24mm. I'm starting off with a standard sort of setting of f8 aperture, and I think at the moment that's reading about a 60th of a second. I'll slow that down by going to a higher aperture and probably adding some filters to it. The reason I'm probably going to slow it down is because there's just no light here at the moment. I'll give you a look through the camera in a minute, but the sun is just falling behind some clouds. There is a little bit of blue there though, so hopefully it drops down below the cloud into that blue sky and we get a bit of light on these rocks. But I'll give you a look now. So this is what I'm seeing at the moment. You can see it's very calm, there's no waves, no splash. There's not a lot of life in there, so slowing it down will flatten it out and give it a much more peaceful look rather than just the ripples on the surface. If it was a really rough day, you'd get much more action by speeding up the shutter speed to capture the action of the waves. But we'll just see what happens with the light in a few minutes. Okay, well the sun's just coming out over my right shoulder here, giving us a bit of sun on the rocks here, so I'm going to take a few shots at these initial settings and see what happens. Okay, I've got the Nissi filter system here. I'm going to put a neutral density filter on. Haven't quite worked out which one yet. It'll depend on how slow I want the shutter speed to go to, and I'll talk you through that when we get to it. But I'm also going to put a polariser on, which will take some of the glare off the water. We don't have the sun directly behind me, so it's not going to change the sky too much, but it will take the glare off the water and off the wet rocks in the foreground. So one of the advantages of the Nissi filter system is that the polariser doesn't go on the front with the other filters. It actually goes in the adapter. So we're going to screw it on here, and I'll show you what that looks like through the lens once we've got it on. So the Nissi adapter has these little wheels on the side so that you can rotate the polarising filter without moving the rest of the adapter. So you should be able to see there the effect that that rotating is having on the reflections on the water. So I now have the 6-stop neutral density filter on the adapter, and I clip this to the front of the lens, and that will now drop the exposure by 6 stops. And at f8 that's now giving me a shutter speed of 1.3 seconds. I'm now going to bump the aperture up to f14, which gives me an aperture of 4 seconds. I have to cover the back of the viewfinder here so that I don't get any sun in, because the sun's directly behind me. On a long exposure, that can actually affect the exposure and give you a bit of flare in there too. So we'll just take a couple of shots. And that's looking quite good. So I've moved down closer to the edge here, and I'm just going to switch over to video here and record what I'm capturing here. So you'll be able to see here that we've got waves coming up over the rocks, and we've got kelp swirling around in this little patch of shallow water down here. It doesn't look particularly spectacular at normal speed on video. So I'm going to put the 6-stop neutral density filter back on, slow the shutter speed down, and see what we can get. So now I've just got to wait for a wave to come up. Typically, one of the things with Seascape photography is that you spend a lot of time sitting around waiting for waves to come. Okay, I've found this little channel here between a little rock island and the rock wall on the left-hand side with kelp hanging down into the channel. I'm going to switch over to video and show you what that looks like. So I'm not sure what shutter speed to use here, what's going to work. So we're going to try it with different apertures and with and without the 6-stop neutral density filter, just to see what we get. Okay, the sun's come out now. As you can see, I'm in bright sunshine, and that means that the sky in the background of this shot now is much brighter than the foreground. So I'm going to put in a graduated neutral density filter to darken down that sky and still shoot the foreground at the same exposure. So that should balance that out a little bit better. Now the other thing we can do when we're taking these sort of shots, because this is almost a vertical shot with this channel running straight up the middle, we can switch the camera over to a vertical view. One of the advantages of having these L plates on the base of the camera is that you can quickly switch that over without having to fiddle around with the tripod. And now get a vertical composition straight away. Obviously I have to now flip the filters 90 degrees and just wait for another wave to get this vertical shot. Okay, quick word on focusing. When you're using these neutral density filters, the viewfinder becomes very dark. So you can switch over to live view, and live view compensates for that quite well. It also enables you to focus. If you switch through to manual focus, so here's the focusing screen on my K1, and if I just zoom out a little bit, if I just hit the OK button, that zooms in at 10:1. And so I can then just move around the focus point to where I want it, and usually about a third of the way up the screen, which means I'm shooting about a third of the way into the foreground to get that focus. And then I can just adjust the manual focus. You can see if I push it out of focus, I lose that black and white view. And if I focus back in, then that gives me, the more contrast I see, the better it is in focus. So that'll do. Right, I've taken the 24 to 70 millimeter Pentax lens off, and I now have the Voigtlander 20 millimeter f3.5 on. That's at f8. It's a manual focus lens, so I'm going to have to do some focusing in manual again, just to make sure that all works, and I'll take a couple of shots at that wider angle. So the sun started to drop down below the horizon and behind the clouds now. So I'm going to put on a 10-stop neutral density filter to really slow this down, flatten everything out, and just to see what I can get. But that's going to take me way beyond the 30 seconds that the camera will calculate for me. So I can use this little app to determine the shutter speed in order to be able to do that. So what I'm going to do then is have a look at this at f8, half a second at ISO 100. So I can scroll this through to half a second, 10 stops, means that's an 8.5 minute exposure. So we'll give that a go and see what we come up with. So you'll notice here that I'm in the middle of the 8-minute exposure at the moment. I still have a fairly bright sky behind me. So I've put this cover over the back of the camera rather than me trying to hold my hand over it for that long and risk bumping the camera while I do it. One of the advantages that the Nikon D810 has over this model Pentax camera is that you can put a little slide down over that viewfinder and block it up. But Pentax, if you're listening, please add that in the next version of this camera. While I'm taking this 8-minute exposure looking the other way over the rocks, I'm turned around using my iPhone to shoot some video of the sunset as it's just dropping below the horizon but still lighting up those clouds. That's Cape Woolamai in the background, and I will swing around here and you can see the beautiful sky in the south. And now the sky over those rocks that I'm shooting that 8-minute exposure, and we'll see what that colour comes up in that shot or not. So that's it for Griffith Point. Sun's gone down, batteries have gone flat on the GoPro, so now it's time to walk back and get on the computer and see what we get. See you next time.